So, we're recording. I put the warm-up in here because some people ask me, when I come to class, how am I supposed to know what the warm-up is? So, it's posted here. If you guys aren't in class and you're watching this at home on your own, here's the warm-up. Get it done, get it turned in, get credit. So, who knows some good qualities of writing? When you were to reflect on your own work, how would you evaluate it and say it is of good quality?
Proper grammar.
Right, got proper grammar.
Yeah. Putting in effort and detail into your work.
Right, it's simple, just effort. And we'll get back to the detail part. Yeah.
Proper punctuation and vocabulary.
Right, grammar.
Spelling.
Punctuation. Spelling. What was the other thing?
Use more advanced vocabulary than
Right, freshman and 8th grade, pressing yourself a little farther, yeah.
Legible handwriting unless it's typed.
Right. What over here? Noticing anything? Yes.
thought.
Ooh, I like that one.
Put into it.
Time. Organization. What do you think, Tegan? You got anything?
Organize and good handwriting.
Organized, right? Legible. Legible. Handwriting. Crystal, did you have one more?
Sentence structure.
Right. Proper grammar, punctuation. So all this is fantastic and awesome. Yes, okay. Ooh, I like that one. Basic stuff, right? Putting your name on the assignment. When you put your name on when you don't put your name on an assignment, it psychologically tells you that you don't want anything to do with it. Like as though you're just like, this is not mine. I don't claim it. Put your name on your stuff, even though you're Dropboxing, put your name on it. Whenever you type up a paper, first order of business, put your name. But, so all this is awesome. But what's the one most important thing that'll kill you every time, even though you might have proper sentences and grammar and spelling and your negatives are awesome? On time, right? On time is important, but there's still one more. So, yeah. Doing it. MLAs, yeah. Actually answering the questions. Which seems like a no-brainer, but you would be surprised. Because I actually read your stuff. There's few enough of you. There's not 180. And I know it seems odd, but a lot of teachers at the big schools, they don't really read your stuff. They don't read what you submit. They'll skim papers because they have too many people. They don't have enough time to really go at it in depth. And I'll actually go at it in depth because there's so few of you. But one of the most important things is that you actually answer the question. And this is something that I'm going to push over and over and over again, is how to pull questions apart and how to figure out what it is the question actually wants from you. Because what are we all taking this year? English, but what's the big test we're taking? The CASI, right? The high school exit exam. And the thing that kills people is the fact that they don't read the questions properly and they don't do what's being asked. They're not smart test takers. They're not smart question answers. So, these are all good qualities. Can anybody think of any bad qualities? Yeah.
Done too hastily.
Right. Done too hastily. Done without any care. Yeah.
Answer the details and answers that are irrelevant to the topic.
Right, that's a really good one. You've got details. Do not apply.
Wait, let's take this.
Totally, right? Like, well, give me one example. For one example.
Effort.
Right. So, done too hastily, effort and time. If you're trying to jam through your work Wednesday night, it's probably going to be garbage. Yeah.
Disorganized thoughts.
Right. Disorganized thoughts. Yeah. Fragmented sentences, disorganized thoughts.
I was just gonna say, incomplete or run-on sentences.
Right. Disorganized thoughts, fragmented, got run-ons, or incomplete sentences or thoughts. Anybody have anything else? Yeah.
Contractions.
Right, you should use contractions, as we're all probably discovering from reading my comments. But that's okay, everybody did it. So no one really lost points. So we'll fix it in the future. One of the things that I'm going to work on, and maybe this might be the first time you've ever come up against it, is that whenever you're doing English work, you need to write it in a professional voice. And when I mean a professional voice, it's the voice that comes across on the page. How do you sound? When you use contractions, contractions are slang. We don't think of them that way, but they're technically can't, don't. Right, so contractions would be don't, which equals do not. Can't equals cannot. You have to get rid of all the contractions. Couldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't,
Don't
I'll.
use I too, right?
Pardon?
Should you not use the word I?
You may not use the word I. If you're looking through your comments and I said don't use personal pronouns, I, you, we, the only time you can use a personal pronoun in a question is when the question specifically asks for your opinion. What do you think of this? Otherwise, I should never come into it, because that's another aspect of professional writing. One of the things you want to do is take yourself out of the equation. Because as you're writing arguments, and these small questions you answer on the page when I give you something, they're just little arguments. Ultimately, we're going to work on these little ones first, and then we're going to write papers, because papers are extended responses to questions. That's all they are. And part of that is you have to take yourself out of it. Because when you write an answer, when you write a paper, and it's all, I think this, and I think that, it's not a valid argument because it's your opinion. We're going to learn to cite details and cite other people's opinions, other people's published opinions, to build your argument. So that's why no personal pronouns. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. So, so what we're going to do is I want to take a look at some examples of student work from last week. There's no names on this. You might recognize it, you might not recognize it. I didn't put this up here to shame you or to give you prompts. It's just I want you to look at it, and I felt like looking at work from your fellow classmates is going to be the most valid. So first order of business, we're going to look at question 6 from Alice Walker's Everyday Use. And the question said, compare contrast. What makes the quilts valuable to Dee, and what makes them valuable to Maggie? Cite evidence. So, what do you do first? Like, what's the first order of business with this question? Like, spend 2 seconds and think about it. do first? I mean, seriously, what's your first inclination? Like, when you read a question, what's the first thing you want to
Think
do?
about when you read it.
Pardon?
When you read the part that it's asking about.
Yes, definitely. So you look at your question, and then one thing she said was reread the section question first. That's an awesome idea, but does this refer to any sort of section? This question? No. Right, so you would be like, oh, I guess I reread the whole story. Which is valid, yeah.
I kind of went like, I go find it.
Okay,
The
right.
evidence and reread.
So, reread or look for.
But there is a part in the story, like the quilt part when they are fighting behind.
Okay. That's okay. I mean, because it's like, obviously, it's a short story. You should be able to read it and recollect and understand. So, you know, obviously you should be able to pull it back. But before you even start looking for evidence, what do you have to do?
Well, what I was going to say is that first you would write what makes the quilt valuable to you.
Okay.
And second, what makes it valuable to Maggie, and then say evidence for the two of them.
Okay, kinda, yeah.
Maybe make like a compare and contrast chart.
Could make a chart. Anybody else have any ideas? This one's pretty obvious because it tells us. You have to ask yourself, what does this question want from me? Because you can, you know, just like, you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go, and then you run off, you know, proverbially. Run off into the text and start looking for examples, but whenever you read a question, you have to ask yourself, what does it want me to do? So this one's nice because it says, compare contrast. So you automatically know, okay, I'm going to need two examples. I'm going to need one for Dee, one for Maggie. And then it also says, cite evidence. So you know that, okay, I can't just summarize here. I'm going to have to go pull quotes. It tells you exactly what it wants from you. So, then what do we do second? Now that we know what the question wants from us, it wants a compare contrast answer and it wants evidence. So, what does it want? So what do we do number 2?
The chart, maybe? Or
Okay, right. You can do a chart,
something. Okay.
right? You can have a chart. What are you going to put in that chart, Jimmy?
You're gonna do D, and then Maggie, like a T chart.
More specifically, though.
But
Like, it's more generally, sorry.
you're probably gonna cite the evidence, I guess.
Right, that's exactly it. Because you're going to create a chart, you'll probably put some generalizations in there. And then you're going to hunt down that evidence. Okay. And you don't necessarily have to make a chart. That's the thing. You can do a mental chart. You know, it's not a complex question. It doesn't require that you think about it for an extended period of time and map it out. But in theory, you know, you're like, okay, I know what this is the relationship between Dee and Maggie. They both want different things. So now I'm going to go hunt down my evidence. And what's your evidence?
Story.
Yeah, story. What are you going to pull, though?
Quote.
Quotes, right? Evidence is always quotes. Sometimes that throws people. They're like, evidence? What the heck am I? What? This isn't science. I'm not looking at forensic studies. Like, what kind of evidence am I looking for? Whenever you write about stories, it's always quotes, evidence, concrete details, same thing. Okay? So, find your evidence, and then, of course, what's the third thing?
Good.
Yeah, do it. Like, actually write out the question. And it helps to do a little bit of pre-thinking before you get to the writing. Because we're going to look at some answers, and it's going to be obvious that someone knew what they wanted to do, but they didn't actually spend any time thinking about it when they wrote it, because it reads like they're thinking. When I say reads like they're thinking, it just goes on and on and on and on, and then there was this, and then there was that, and then. If you're ever writing something and you reread it, and it really feels like you're saying and then, you need to do a little revision. Okay, so, first student example. She thinks that the quilts are valuable to eat. What's wrong with this? Right? Like, Bella got it right. Who's she? I have no idea. Right? I mean, yeah, I can intuit that it must be Maggie or somebody, but non-specific, yeah.
Don't they always say write your answers as if somebody's reading them has it?
Totally, she got it right there. Always write your answers, always write your papers, as though you're writing for an audience and have no idea what you're talking about. So you have to define the sheets, the keys, the hints, specific vocabulary, all of it.
Is that, I don't know, because like, I've had teachers say that, and then like my teacher, Fonda, this year, she said that, she's like, when you write a paper, like, it's like, I've already read the story, so it's just write them.
Yeah. No, don't do it. That, it's assuming something of your audience, and if you're going to become a good writer, if you're going to be successful in college, you can never assume anything of your audience. You can never assume that your audience has knowledge of the text, or that your audience understands it the way you do. And that's the rub right there, is that you can never assume that your audience is as smart as you, as well read as you, has the same background as you, so you have to show them what you think. So, she thinks that the quilts are valuable to D, right? We've got a she, who knows who the she is? What else? Right, it's a blank statement. It doesn't prove anything. Yeah.
She's not comparing it, it's not comparing and contrasting. It's just like,
Right. It's not comparing and contrasting. She's not doing what the question asked her. There's no evidence. Right? This isn't an answer. This is nothing.
somewhere,
I don't know. I don't remember who wrote any of these. I just sort of typed them out this morning. But it's like, yeah, he, she, the student that created this. I mean, this isn't an answer. She thinks that the quotes are valuable to D. It tells me nothing, and it doesn't answer that question. That's your first order of business, is to make sure your answer actually attends to the question itself. So, there's a lot of variety, because I wanted you guys to see what different people are doing. So, Dee sees the quilts as a decoration and something she can show off to people, while Maggie sees them as something to remember her family by and something that will be a present to her when she gets married. Dee says that Maggie would put them on the bed and in 5 years they'd be rags, less than that. And I think this shows that she sees the quilts as an object and not a useful thing someone has passed down to them. Maggie says, I can't remember Grandma Dee without the quilts, which I think that shows how she thinks of the quilts as more of a memory than an object to hang out.
Okay, that is lost. First sentence, or I mean, maybe not first sentence, but halfway through, I just got anxiety, and I didn't know what was going on.
You know what that anxiety feeling is?
work.
Pardon? No, well, what it is, it's like when you're reading and you feel that, and you're just like, oh, crazy run-on sentences. And this is someone thinking and not editing.
Because I closed on set.
Right, you don't, there's no page numbers on the quotes, and that's the thing, just because we're all reading the same story doesn't mean you don't have to use page numbers.
But this at least will compare and contrast and has quotes. So
Right, it compares and contrasts, it has quotes, but then it gets down into the individual structure. So it's like, Dee sees the quotes as a decoration and something she can show off to people, while Maggie sees them as something to remember her family by and something that will be a present to her when she gets married. Okay. Dee says that. Maggie put them on the bed, and in 5 years they'd be rags, less than that. And I think this shows that she sees the quotes as an object and not a useful thing people has passed down to them. Right, we've got some spelling, some grammar issues. But what about the I?
Yeah.
Right? Did this question ask anything about your opinion? No. So you have to take the eyes out. Because, put your feet on the floor.
Can you just take the and I think out, but this shows?
Exactly. You can write this shows or, Alice Walker's intention. Whenever you cite an author by name, last name, Mrs. Walker or Alice Walker, she's not your buddy. You don't get to call her Alice. A lot of people did that. So it's Walker states, in everyday use.
I call you April because we're your bed.
No, I don't know. You call me April because this school was founded on hippie philosophy. And, I'm not a teacher. I'm an advisor. I'm to guide you through your education. That's what it comes from. Seriously, that's where it comes from.
Those been forever.
I know, exactly. So, let's see. Okay. And then you've got little things like they do introduce the quotes. Dee says that. You can clean it up and say Dee states, comma. Right? Just little things, but they've got the idea of it here. This is just nuts and bolts and editing. Because the first sentence, Dee sees the quilts as a decoration and something she can show off to people. Period. Or semicolon. Maggie sees them as something to remember her family by. Right? Yeah.
Is in the second quote, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is it supposed to be I can't remember? Or is that
I can remember Grandma Dee without the quilts.
Yeah.
It's a direct quote. I had to read it twice and check it. So, and that's another thing. I didn't cross-check both of these quotes, but whenever you use the quotes, make sure they're right. Does anybody see anything else in here? Okay. Awesome. So, Maggie is accustomed to seldom receiving things that she desires. She wishes for something of her grandmother's. In contrast, Dee seems to have a feeling of privilege, thus believing that the quilts should belong to her. Pluses and minuses.
That's good. It seems like pretty good because it's simple, but then it gets the point across, except for the fact that there's no evidence.
Right. All this needs is evidence. And it's awesome because the person used the right words. In contrast, they let us know exactly what their intent is by using the proper words, but this one, all it needs is evidence. Because you can state all you want, but if you don't have evidence, it has no value. So, the quilts are valuable to Dee because she claims they are priceless in lines 244 to 246. She also wishes to take them for the very reason that she believes they will not be appreciated, but used and worn out. Maggie wants them because she sees the quilts as a way to remember her grandmother, though she was willing to give them up in lines 255 to 257. Grandma Dee and Big D taught Maggie how to quilt as mentioned in lines 259 and 260, so that is why they're valuable to Maggie. Someone other than that. What do you think?
It doesn't. I mean, it's good and it shows the examples very well, but it doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't sound good. You could have worded it better.
Okay. Matt?
I get the feeling that this person was. They didn't want to put a direct quote. They felt like wary of plagiarism or something like that.
Okay, perhaps.
I think that ending it with "so that is why they are valuable to Maggie" isn't exactly the correct way to phrase that. I don't know. It just seems a little weird for some reason. I don't know.
They were kind of lazy and just wrote where to find the quotes instead of actually putting it in.
Okay.
I thought it was pretty good.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's a good basic answer, but the real problem is lines 244 to 246. Do you ever quote things from stories by identifying lines?
The questions are the questions.
Well, I know, because they want to give you a reference point without being like, you'll find this line. But the only thing that you ever give line numbers to, does anybody know?
But
Poems and plays. And poems not always. Sometimes poems won't have line numbers, so you don't do it. Only extended poems. Yeah.
I feel like it'd also be better if they like put out where they're comparing and where they're contrasting. Like,
Completely. Because we don't know exactly what they're doing. you don't want your readers to have to do the work. You want to set up the structure. You want to make sure they understand exactly what it is that you're doing because you don't want them to get confused. You want to make sure they see it just like you do.
There's a lot of sheets.
Right. She also wishes to take them for the very reason that she believes they will not be appreciated when used and worn out. Who is she referencing? You only want to get maybe like one pronoun away from whatever your subject is, and then back out. Because you don't want to get your reader confused.
In middle school, we had to write an essay with both use of like one pronoun every certain amount. It was so
Right? It's really difficult, especially when you start paying attention to like that.
Like you said earlier, with the writing, there's somebody that hasn't read the story,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of stating it like they're like writing it to audience.
Exactly. And this also makes work for me, right? Because in theory, if I'm going to sit down and go through this and really, pick this question apart and look to see if it's valid, I have to go find that. 240, 246, because I don't know what the heck this person is talking about.
Just to know what it says.
Right, just right. So don't, yeah. So, what we're going to work on today, blank piece of paper, please. I'm going to teach you how to write a better answer.
Title of that?
How to write a better answer. Yeah. Otherwise known as the 5-step paragraph. 5-step paragraph. It'll come into play. We're going to extend this as time goes on, and I'm going to teach you how to use this in the body of essays. So, yeah. Yeah. Write everything down, and I'll talk you through it. So, this is for notes. So, whenever you write a question, whenever you write an answer to a question, you always want your reader to know what the question is. You don't want them to have to try to guess. You don't want, to be sneaky and crafty. You want to tell them exactly what it is that you're doing. What is the point, purpose, and reason behind your writing? And the way that you do that is your first thing that you do is you should restate the question as a statement. Jacqueline, you taking notes? Thinking about it? Thank you. You may paraphrase that quote. You may paraphrase that question. You don't necessarily have to write it out word for word, but it becomes the topic sentence of your paragraph. And as in, at this point in your guys' high school careers, your English responses for the literary response questions, not the comprehension questions, like the questions that I assign you at the end of stories, you should be writing about a paragraph. You should be citing evidence, you should be explaining that evidence. So, first order business, restate the question. Second thing you want to do is introduce your supporting evidence. And when I mean introduce your supporting evidence, you can't just slap a quote into a question, into an essay. You have to sort of guide your readers into it, and the way you do that is by sort of giving it ownership. Like, for example, Walker states, quote, page number, he states, gives it a home, lets people know where it's coming from. And it can be, I give you a whole list, I'll give you a handout on this in a second. And You know, it can be the narrator states in chapter 17, comma, quote. There's tons of ways that you can do this, but you need to give your quote just an introduction. Give it a little help.
If you don't do that, it's not called a drop.
It's kind of, yeah, I always think of it that way too, or slapping it in. You know, you want it to be as smooth, you're writing, you want it to be as smooth and pretty as possible, and this is one of the ways you make it smooth. You don't want it to feel chunky. And at this point in the game, you might not have spent enough time with your writing and paid enough attention to it to really understand the difference between smooth and chunky, but the more you work on it, the more you're going to see it. You know, it's the difference between slapping icing on a cake and then smoothing it out. What I'm hopeful is I'm going to teach you is how to smooth that writing out, how to make it pretty. And so then you're going to write your supporting evidence, and you've got to check it. Make sure that you're quoting properly. Make sure that you're spelling correctly, because if something's misspelled in a quote, you can't change it. You can, you know, there's tricky ways to change things, but we'll get into that at a later date. But at this point, you want to make sure that you're quoting verbatim, that you're getting it correct. And then, of course, give it page number, line number, scene number, depending on what we're doing. And once you've written your supporting evidence, you've got to do two things. You got to give it context, and when I mean give it context, you got to tell me when it's happening, what's going on. And then you need to connect your evidence to the question, that topic sentence, and then conclude. Anybody need another minute? No? Okay. So, what you're going to do, we have a few minutes, and this, take some time with it. I'm going to put you into groups, and what you're going to do is you'll take the Blue English book, turn to page 61, and you're going to pull out number 6, the one that we just talked about in class, and I'll give you the handout, and as a class, as a group, you're going to sit, and you're going to figure out how to turn that, using examples and everything, into a 5-step answer. Yeah. So let's see how many people want to. 25. 5 groups of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ones are here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now it's 5.
Okay.
Check that.
Figure out jobs. Who's going to be the writer? Who's going to look for information? All that stuff.
Where'd she say
You remember 4?
Yeah.
Do I actually remember one that?